Recording real quick. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's get this started, shall we?
Yes, let's do it.
Um. So, Mark, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Mark. I'm a co-founder at AMG DAO, and this is actually my second startup. My previous startup I exited from, it was an AI assistant for games. So basically, whenever you would face an obstacle or like have missed a tutorial or had like some additional information that you needed from your computer or from like this AI agent, you could ask by using your voice. So you never had to leave the game to get this information out. And it's funny because we used to use like GPT-3 back then, and it wasn't like really all the hype just then. But anyway, the technology was sold to our investors, so we got out of that. And yeah, this is my second startup that I've co-founded. What we are doing is basically working with crypto games. This had been a long journey. At first, we started off by just investing in games, so acquiring NFTs and renting them out to players, kind of like get the activity in terms of player numbers going for some of the games that we worked with or invested in. But slowly it has evolved into like this organization or company that provides tools for user generated content. And now we have our players create additional content for games, like new skins, new maps, new quests for some of the games that we're partnering with. And it's all thanks to like generative AI and blockchain technology that can basically democratize all the tools that were available to a selected few before. And now it's been so as a gamer now you can get rewarded for co-creating with the game publishers and game studios, and that's something that we're working on right now, just to provide the tools for gamers to be able to co-create.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I know you have touched on it a little bit already, but can you tell us a little bit about what actually is Web3 gaming and what sets it apart from like traditional gaming?
All right. I think like you can, if you go online and you can see multiple like advantages and disadvantages of Web 2 and Web 3 gaming. I think that the true potential of Web 3 gaming hasn't been really realized just yet. A lot of people are working on it, of course, but mainly in Web 2, because of like its centralized nature that we kind of like call it. It's main problem is that everything that you have in terms of games, like all the skins, all the games that you own, you don't really own them. You basically are licensing them from like the game's publisher. So if you buy a game from Steam and the publisher disappears, you will have no way of getting back anything that you spent on the game. Like all your energy or your time, it just goes wasted. Whereas with Web3, we have at least the protocols. Obviously there's some additional work that needs to be done in order to like keep everything forever, right? But at least the Web3 games is promised is that whenever you buy something from the game, whenever you earn something from a game, it's yours forever. So you were basically able to like take one item and bring it to another game. If even if the game like closes down, you might be able to use those items in other games. Or you I mean, essentially for me, Web3 is like open source nature would enable games to be like completely open source, to share the IP with the gamers. And so basically you're building forever games all the time, because at the end of the day, if the studio decides that they don't want to like build that game anymore, or they like want to forget about it, there's still a couple users who want to keep that alive, then they should be able to, because they kind of like paid for it. So that's kind of like what differentiates Web 2 from Web 3. Definitely the ownership aspect, and also some of the like the open sourceness and IP sharing that is not available right now for gamers all around the globe. I mean, if you think about what happened in China, for example, where the Netmarble deal couldn't go through with Blizzard, and a lot of Chinese players, like I think 3 million Chinese players, lost their World of Warcraft accounts. And
Wow.
what can you do as a player, right? And
Yeah.
that was like no way for you to kind of like get that back, because everything was like, oh, sorry guys, like the higher ups couldn't make the deal, so you just lost all the items that you have. In a Web3 game, it couldn't have happened, because you basically own all those items. And let's say we just provide you a new access to like European servers, which means that you can bring all your items over to a European server. and then everything you still have is own. So we are not siloed in the little in servers. And of course, like if you're connecting to a European server from China, for example, it's going to be slower a little bit, yes, but at least everything that you own in the game, until the problem gets solved or something, it's not lost, or you can still get access to it. And obviously, like the very very like visionary thing about that would be like to have everything run decentralized, which means that like you're basically connecting to other clients, other people's clients, etc., and kind of like syncing all the information that's on the chain. So not necessarily needed to have like multiple servers around the globe if it runs in a decentralized manner. So yeah, there's a bunch of advantages of Web3 games. Technologically, we're not there yet, so potentially like a fully on-chain game or like a fully Web3 game wouldn't be able to have like that fast of a data transfer. Like the latency would be huge, but a lot of people are working on that problem to be solved. So yeah, that's kind of like, we see it as an evolution rather than a revolution of Web2 games.
That makes sense. But do you think game creators going to find it more challenging and difficult to develop a Web3 games because it requires like crypto related knowledge and there's more element into it?
I think you're very correct in terms of like the phrasing. I think the phrasing and the whole like narrative has to be changed, right? So for example, if you play Fortnite right now, you're not saying that you're playing like a Amazon Web Services game or like an internet game, like, because that's not what you're saying. You're saying like you're playing Fortnite. Whereas with Web3 games, it's the narrative is always like it's a blockchain game, it's a crypto game, it's a Web3 game or something like that. So we can, I think ultimately we need to get rid of all those like differentiation in terms of like like the phrasing is just gaming. And the fact that you as a player can own your items, it is part of the game, that you will understand that. But like we don't necessarily need to like scare people away with like the blockchain and the crypto elements. As a developer, it's, yeah, it was, I think like at the early stages, whenever it wasn't like well built in terms of like the infrastructure, it was hard to build. Now we are seeing in Unity especially, and in Unreal Engine, like I think the two main engines that we are using to build games, they actually have decentralization plugins, so it's easier for you to kind of like write the smart contract features into your games. And once like the big players, the big platforms that you use to develop games start supporting decentralization, you as a game developer can decide if you want to go down that road or not. Like, what are the advantages for me? What are the disadvantages? So obvious disadvantages right now is that, like, for example, Steam doesn't really support NFT games, so you might lose, like your distribution channel there. But Epic Games, for example, does support or does tolerate them. So there is, like multiple decisions that you need to make as a game developer. In its current state, I'm not saying that it's much harder to develop. It requires, yes, thinking. It also requires a lot more thinking about the economy of the game. Like, what are the items that, that can be sold? Like, do I allow trading of my in-game currency to players? If you do, then you're basically acting as a central bank of your own game, because you gotta think about like, okay, so when do I print the currency? When do I deflate the currency? And all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, technology-wise, it shouldn't be harder. Like business wise, it might get like trickier in terms of like releasing and building something like that.
Oh, okay. So you think it's pretty easy for game creators to transition from traditional gaming to build Web3 gaming, but it's just a business aspect that you got to put your mind into that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I do think so. And if we had this interview like a year ago or something like that, I wouldn't have said so. But now I'm also obviously developing games myself, so I'm seeing like all the plugins that can be used, and like those, once those are ready, you're basically like just plugging it into your game. But like in terms of like what that's gonna cause for your game, you need to think about. So yeah, that's what it, like, creativity wise and business wise, you need to think a lot more about it than like from previous games. Because in previous games, you're just like, okay, so I'm gonna set the economy, like I'm gonna give you like an extra heart for 1,000 gold, but you don't need to calculate with like maybe that 1,000 gold is not gonna come like the player buying it from me, but it's gonna come from buying it, them buying it from other players. So this open economy aspect of Web3 games can get tricky in terms of like planning the game itself. And in basically like these days, it's actually kind of like hard. So I'm seeing a lot bigger games being developed by much smaller teams. So if you look at the Steam, I think yesterday I read this article about like this game who made it on the top, like purchased games on Steam. It was developed by about 4 developers. I mean, obviously it took them like 7 years, but by 4 developers, and thanks to AI and all these solutions that we are seeing right now, the technology to create games straight out of your imagination, like you just imagine a game and you can just build it, it gets easier. But you still got to think about like the creative aspects, the economy aspects, and all those things that an AI might not be able to solve for you like right away out of the box, because that's stuff that you need to think about as a developer.
That's fair. That's understandable. And we have talked a little bit about game creators, but what about gamers? Why do you think gamers should choose Web3 gaming instead of traditional games? And what do you think it's in it for them that they can't find in traditional game?
Right. I think that's actually the billion-dollar question, right? So if you look at some of the things that are currently available for Steam, for example, when you can trade your CS:GO skins like knives and weapons, etc., that is a well-established marketplace. You can basically get paid for selling your skins. So there's a lot of aspects that already exist in Web2 games. I think Web3 games is I'm gonna go definitely with the ownership. So once players understand, I think through examples like the one I said about like Netmarble in China, in terms of like not being able to make a deal with Blizzard around World of Warcraft. I think that's like, I think once they experience something bad that's very by the nature of like Web2 games, like a game being shut down, their items being lost, everything like that, they will understand how valuable it is to have like a Web3 game rather than like just playing Web2 games. I think from a gamer's perspective, once we have true interoperability in Web3 games, when like if I buy like an item in Fortnite, I can transfer that or bring it over to Minecraft and then bring it back into Roblox, etc. So once those protocols are developed or created, and I'm a strong believer that Web3 or blockchain technology is going to be the one that helps us kind of like create this interoperable worlds, basically. That's when gamers will see the true value of like how Web3 games work. And not to mention that because of the open economy, they can also be part of like an integral part of games that they are playing, or they are either co-creating or playing. So previously in like a Web2 game, you couldn't get rewarded for if you built a mod, for example. That's stuff that is something that we're obviously looking into and working with. So right now mods are like a gray area where game publishers kind of tolerate it and gamers and creators love to do it. For them it's very complicated. Like to develop a Skyrim mod, you have to have at least some type of like a development knowledge, or you have to have learned like computer science a little bit, at least like programming or coding. But for Skyrim, it's actually very good because of the mods. It has become like, I think, one of the top 10 like most sold games in the world, because like the content of it just never expires. Because like if you played Skyrim and if you wanted to have it in VR, then they released it. But previous to that, their release of VR, there was VR mods that they could do, right? So I think from a gamer's perspective, when you create something, you might not get rewarded in a Web2 kind of way, because they just say, all right, like it's good for you, thank you very much for pushing our game's life cycle like by a year or two. But in the Web3 way, they can get rewarded with the game's either native token or by other users who are like, okay, so if I get this mod, then I'm gonna be able to like play my favorite game. So you can kind of like have these elements of like players really feeling like they're part of the game's development, they're part of the game's world, and they can work with the game studios and developers rather than just be like the passive like enjoyers of a game. So that's what's gonna be in it for them.
Okay. And if you think there's so many advantages to Web3 gaming, do you think Web3 gaming um can compete with traditional games in terms of like popularity in the future?
All right. Okay. You're asking all the right questions. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, yes, I think yes. One of the things that I have observed over the past, I think, 2 years, while we've been building this guild, or like this company, is that at first what I felt like was crypto people coming into developing games, because the play to earn and the whole like the crypto games aspect and narrative was so hyped. We have seen crypto and speculators, crypto people and speculators coming into the gaming space saying that, oh, I'm going to develop games. And obviously those games never really that just never really were good, right? So they were like,
Mm.
you know, screensavers, and you just looked at things, and you know, they did something for you automatically, and you were like earning tokens, and the whole thing was pyramid schemes and stuff like that. But now, ever since I think like 6 months ago, what I have been observing is like a shift in terms of like actual game developers coming into the Web3 space to develop the games, right? And we
Mhm.
all know that, you know, game development can take like long times, especially with like AAA titles or like, you know, stuff that really, you know, makes people enjoy games. Um, yeah, I mean, yes, there could be some competition. I think Web3 is still waiting for its Pokemon Go moment. So, you know, augmented reality was really understood when, you know, like you could catch Pokemons, like, you know,
Mhm.
oh, so this is augmented reality, like, you know, Pokemons in the office or, you know, something like that. And Web3 is still waiting for that game to happen, but that really brings it mainstream. But yeah, ultimately, yeah, I do see why we wouldn't have, you know, any popular genres that are, you know, entirely Web3 type.
Very interesting. Um, and because I know like for many people, the solely incentive for them to get into the Web3 gaming industry is because to make money, right? But like when
Mhm.
it comes to gaming, there's always the concern about potential hacking and cheating. And how do you think Web3 gamers can address this issue?
All right. Yeah, I think it was more for me at least. It was more apparent in Web3 games that, you know, cheaters or people who created bots and stuff like that, they actually came in and, you know, did some bad things. Um, so in competitive games like Valorant and League of Legends, you always have like the anti-cheat software that, you know, like pays attention to like, no, like third-party program is being used that is not allowed, etc., etc. Like overlays shouldn't give you like extra information about team positions and, you know, all that kind of stuff. With Web3 games, since it's all about money, right? So like in Web3 games, especially, you know, like previous to like the current market conditions, it was always like you could make a lot of money out of just like, you know, playing or like, you know, looking at some games or like, you know, botting those games. So a lot of people came in and, you know, created bots and created cheat engines just so they could like game the system, pun intended, and get, you know, like get more tokens out of like one gameplay, right? So that has been, you know, like an issue here. I think there has been some cool things implemented, like, you know, like bot checking engines, like just making sure that, you know, like you know, you have to like, if it's a card game, you had to like in mid game you had to like click on like the you know, I'm not a robot or like stuff like
Mm.
that. So that those are like the basics that have happened. uh, Based on our conversations with the game developers, every single one of them is doing their best to integrate like checking systems or verification system in their algorithm, where, you know, like if a player is like away from the keyboard, and, you know, like you can tell by its behavior that maybe they are not the ones playing, etc. So those players are banned or prohibited from playing the game. So but yeah, it's I think it's a major issue, and we'll need to have some solutions there where, you know, like, but apparently like, and I also talked to like hackers who like, you know, built these bots and, you know, like built stuff like that, stuff like
Mhm.
illegal things, and they said that they're always ahead of the game. Like, you know, like they can always, you know, like build some things that are, you know, the checking engines are not, or the verification engines are not thinking about, or they are not able to kind of like, you know, spot them and you know, ban them from the game. But I do think that, you know, like there has to be some evolution there. Maybe through AI we'll be able to kind of like, you know, analyze the data at such pace and, you know, like maybe understand the patterns a lot better than we did previously to like, you know, ban these players. But yeah, that's definitely, I mean, it's not as sophisticated as like Web 2 just yet, but
Mhm.
once we see like all those anti-cheat engines coming into Web 3, we're also going to be, I think, sorted. And I'm a naive optimist. Some people call me that. So I just trust in players not wanting to like cheat the system because it's a game that they enjoy. Like, why would you?
Right.
But at the other end, it's like, yeah, I've been proven wrong many times. So
So do you think gamers should get into the industry right now, like as in like playing Web3 games, or do you think they should wait a little bit to see how the market is going?
I think I think there is an abundance of games these days on the market, right? So if you go on Steam, if you go on Epic Games Launcher, if you go on any of like, you think about like, you know, yourself, if you think about your phone, your PC, your Mac or whatever, there is tons of games that you can play, right? So it's like very hard to like, I mean, if you like, even if you like genres, like there's like many RPG games, thousands of FPS games, like you, and there's mixtures of genres and a lot of stuff. So I think it really depends on your game style, right? So if you want to try something out before it hits the actual mainstream, yes. If you want to be involved, like if you're a player who wants to be involved with the development at very early stages of like even an industry, then definitely like try some Web3 games out. There is like a lot of alpha testing opportunities, a lot of cool stuff happening out there. And as a player, you can get really involved with a developer team. Like, we are talking about, teams of 3, 4, 6, 8 people working on the games. They might have raised some funding. So you as a player can really get a word in where, like, please guys do this in the game and stuff like that. So I think if you're adventurous, if you like playing games, then like definitely a couple Web3 games you should get involved with, just to see what's on the market, just to see what's out there. But in gameplay wise, I'm also playing like League of Legends with my friends, right? I play Diablo 4 right now. I mean, not right now, of course, but
Yeah.
I play Diablo 4. So I mean, yeah, and I think. Yeah, I think definitely feedback is required, but definitely be involved with some of them, because that's how the whole industry will go in the direction that
Right.
we can actually shape, and not like, not like when crypto people try to develop games. So.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And this is the question that everyone wants to know. So on average,
Right.
how much time does it usually take, would you say, for like Web3 gamers to start earning money?
Right. I think it really. I mean, I've seen some games where like you can start earning after like half an hour or so. Like the token wise, like in games that, for example, we are working with, like token wise, in some games you can get like token rewards like right away when you start playing the game. It's
Hmm.
after like that's kind of like money that you can earn. However, some game mechanics require you to like spend that back into the game, or like you won't be able to get any more if you don't spend it on the game, or if you don't spend it on like upgrades and research and stuff like that. So the in-game currency, the way it's been used for many years in other games where you have to like spend on your character in order to like get better items, get better at the game itself, it sometimes requires you to get back to spend on the token, to spend the tokens that you're earning. The major ways to earn these days, I think, with games, with the Web3 games, are like we have a stream to earn program. So if you create content for a game, you usually get rewarded for like by with their token. So that's something that we're working on as well ourselves. We have a stream to earn program. So if players come in and stream some of the partner games that we have, like crypto unicorns or others, they will get like $1 reward. So from 1 hour of stream you can already get like a reward, not from the game but from like us as like the company who kind of like loves to support and pay streamers to kind of like just start streaming the game. Tournaments are huge, so a lot of Web3 games are spending their marketing budgets on like getting active players through tournaments. So we are currently running a tournament that has like a final prize pool of $35,000. That's a lot of money, and as a player you can get like a couple of thousands if obviously you win the tournament. And that's thanks to the fact that like marketing budgets are being spent on the players and rather than like platforms. And the third way is, of course, like the creation. So I have also seen a lot of players who might create a new piece of content, new maps, new quests, even new kind of like levels for some of the games that they like, and then they will also get rewarded for it. So it really depends. If you want to earn with games, it really depends on your engagement. If you're just a player, like vanilla, just a player, you can earn the tokens of the game right away after an hour. You can make like from 10 to a couple $100 a month, depending on how well you're playing the game, how much you're playing the game. But if you really want to kind of like get into this and think of gaming as a career, the same opportunities are open for you as it were for like a Web2 game, like the tournaments, the streaming, and this new aspect of like the user generated content that you can get like money from. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I agree
Those
with
are the
that.
things
Yeah.
that are happening.
Yeah, if you're an active gamer, there's a huge potential in the Web3 gaming industry for sure.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think because I mean, if you think about it, it's like very logical because Facebook and Google and all these platforms that you usually use to acquire new players. I mean, obviously you've seen like all the ads, right? So like wherever you go, you see like, okay, so play this game, and those are like on YouTube or like whichever like video platform that you're using. You're seeing like the ads of games, and that's what they use to like acquire games. But in reality, a lot of those platforms actually ban crypto ads. So if they figure out that you're like shilling a crypto game, they're just gonna ban you or like they prohibit
Really?
you from like advertisement. So what these games do is like allocate those marketing dollars to actual player engagement. So that's why it's worth your time going into and looking into Web3 games. I think if you're a player, the first couple games that you're going to find in like the Web3 world are going to be giving you like free NFTs, whitelist spots, maybe some free tokens to like start playing with the game. But as you go even deeper, there's many games that reward you for playing the alpha test, for, as I've said, creating content, etc. So yeah.
Definitely. And before we start wrapping up, do we have any final thoughts or insight you would like to share regarding the current state and the future prospect of like Web3 gaming?
I think yes. I think Web3 gaming has seen a lot of improvements over the past 2 years. So now we have tested out some of the mechanics that will not work, like the play to earn mechanics, where like at least in that format where you just like reward everyone for everything that they do. That's just not gonna work, because the financial incentives usually overrides the game incentive, right? So you as a player, if someone asks you like you can pay your rent by playing Dota 2, then you're just gonna play Dota 2 to pay your rent, and not because you like Dota 2. Like that's when it becomes kind of like work or like a different incentive. So I think that's definitely something that does not work in the long term. But also having said that, we also need games that like where players can like really enjoy the open economy, where like it's worth my time to get the latest loot out of like a dragon because I can sell it to this other player, but everything that I earn, I only take out like part of it, like like because I need to like pay for rent, going back to the same example, but also I'm going to spend it back into the game, and like also spend back into the game because I enjoy it, because I live there, because like that's my social circle is there. So games like that have not happened, and that's what I'm looking forward to see. And another trend that is obviously have been moving the world with the AIs and everything that's happening in like the large language models, like in the Golem era, the generative large language models. What we're seeing is that it's even easier now for players or like for developers to create games. So I think now they can really have the time to put in their or create their creative minds into it, because admin wise, like repetitive task wise, there are AIs that can take over for them. So now I feel like we are going to be seeing Web3 games that whose economy is well developed and it's very well done, simply because like the developers had the time to really like think it through and even model it with some of the tools that they have. So I think 2023 and 2024 even is going to be like very much the dawn of like big and great Web3 games. Some of the things that I've seen, they're calling it GameFi summer, 2023 summer. They call it GameFi summer for some reason. So like people are expecting tons of titles being released over the summer that really make people play. But I think that it's going to be more like 2024, because in 2023 we are already like packed with like big AAA titles like Starfield and Diablo and all these games coming out. So I'm not even sure where to look these days anymore. It's just, I don't know, like I don't have enough time to play. There's like much more games than my time.
I guess we'll never know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's just like it's crazy what's going on right now. So.
I know. All right. So I'm afraid this is going to be all the time that we have for today.
Oh, okay.
Thank you a lot for your time, and it's been great talking to you today, Mark.
Yeah, you too. And yeah, whenever you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me on Telegram.
Definitely. Really appreciate and then of course. And then when we're done with the article, we'll send you the link and everything.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Have a good rest of your day. Take care.
You too. Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.